thank you so much for taking time out to join me today. I'm Cicely Witcher with Reservation The World, and I'm sitting here with director Kelly Anderson of the documentary My Brooklyn. It's amazing, and she's going to give us a little history of it. Hi, Kelly. So could you tell me a little bit about your documentary, My Brooklyn?
Sure. My Brooklyn is a feature-length documentary, and it really is a blend of my own personal journey living in Brooklyn since 1988 and moving into a lot of different neighborhoods and seeing them change pretty dramatically. I guess the word for it is gentrification. And sort of wondering, what I could do about that, if anything. And then the other thing the film talks about, it's a bit more of an investigative piece about why the city decided to redevelop the Fulton Mall, which is downtown Brooklyn's commercial
It used
strip.
to be known as the, what is it, Albert Mall?
Well, the Albee Square Mall is one structure within a larger area called Fulton Mall, which actually was the third most profitable shopping district in all of New York City, which people don't know. And the city decided in 2004 to rezone it and transform it through something called the Downtown Brooklyn Plan, and it's had a huge impact on the area.
So what made you all do this documentary, and who worked with it? Who did you work with on this documentary? Who's the crew and everything?
Well, it was largely me and Allison Dean, who's the producer and the researcher, and it was actually Allison's idea. She was doing oral histories down at Fulton Mall for the Pratt Institute, Pratt Center for Community Development, because they knew that the rezoning had happened and they were just wanting to talk to people about their attachment to the place and to find out whether the city's view was true, because the city basically says, as you saw in the film, that the area was underutilized and nobody really liked it, and the stores weren't very good,
and it
lacked
scary
retail diversity. Exactly, but actually what Allison found out was that people had deep attachment to it, and that's why it was so successful. And so she came to me with the idea of making the film.
I know when you were filming, you had to be totally unbiased, but while watching it, I kind of got a little annoyed. And I'm going to go for it. I got really angry, okay? Especially when I was watching Joe Chan. And I'm going to quote exactly what he says. He says, Joe Chan said, the people are coming to Brooklyn because they're choosing a lifestyle being less than mainstream, creative, and off the beaten path. And that's something that he has to capitalize on, of course. But I just felt he was really contradictory because that's what they're taking out. We got rid of the Fulton Mall, the Albuquerque Square Mall. Am I saying it right?
Albee Square.
Albee Square Mall. And it's now we have Aldo's, H&M. So aren't we going mainstream? So it kind of made me angry. What did you feel when he said that?
Well, actually, my favorite part of that quote is right before that, where he says, 10 years ago, my friends wouldn't live in Brooklyn. And or go to a bar or restaurant in Brooklyn. And if they did live in Brooklyn, it was for economic reasons, not cultural reasons. And so I guess what struck me about it the most was that the city is making public policy based on some notion of whose friends are more valuable than other people. So to me, the whole idea of what Joe Chan's friends want is irrelevant. I mean, we should be talking to the people who live in Brooklyn and seeing what they need, and that's not what the city did with this redevelopment plan. And I should say that Joe Chan is the president of the Downtown Brooklyn Partnership, which is the organization that, it's a public-private partnership that basically shepherded this whole change through.
So it could have been, so it's kind of like a conflict of interest because he had stuff to gain from all of this, so why would he care about what the people, so when the people went and spoke at the town hall meetings and everything, they really didn't have a voice, they really didn't have a chance. It appears that way, I'm not sure, but it appeared that way, that their voice really didn't count. How do you think that this happened, the rug got pulled out from under these people's, out from under their feet, without them even, it didn't seem like they really knew what was going on until it was almost too late. Was it because of their economic status? Did their voice didn't count?
Well, I mean, I think one thing that's happened in Brooklyn over the past 12 years is that more and more power has been centralized in the mayor's office. So planning decisions have been made from the top and then they get implemented down. And so even in neighborhoods where people are more privileged or have more resources, I think it's not been a very democratic process in general. In downtown Brooklyn, I think the fact that many of the store owners there, they rent, they're not owners. A lot of them are immigrants, first generation, and so it may not be, they're struggling with the language, a lot of them. Even though they're super successful business people, as you see in the movie, they're not necessarily going to go and fight their case at City Hall. So, yeah, I think it's all of that. But, the city has definitely, these 110 rezonings that have happened under Bloomberg they have definitely increased inequality in the city, and one of the things they've done is upzone areas that are more people of color, less economically privileged, and more renters.
Yeah, because one of the business owners, he said his rent went from $15,000 to $45,000 a month, and that is like absurd. Like, how can this happen? And also, I was watching this lady, Kumar.
Purnima Kapoor.
Yeah, what's her title? She's
the director of the Brooklyn office of city planning.
Okay, when I watched her, she seemed so unattached. She seemed so cold, and she was like, well, you know, change is just something that happens, and people always kind of like, you know, I don't want to, her exact quote was, when she said change is difficult in regards to the fact that the tenants can no longer afford to pay their rent since the landlords have more than tripled them, but smart businesses learn to adapt. She actually says she sympathizes to the fact that they're going through the difficult times, but she just seems so cold, unattached, and totally out of touch with reality, because I wanted to ask her, like, what if her family came here and they built up Fulton Street just like a lot of people did, and now all of a sudden they're like, you know what, thank you, but we want our street back, so now you have to go, and we're going to make your rent $45,000. Would she have been so sympathetic and understanding that change is just something that happens? And what did you think when she said that?
People like Purnima Kapoor from City Planning and Joe Chan from the Downtown Brooklyn Partnership, I don't know what they really believe, but I do know that part of their job is to be the public face of policies that are often unpopular. So, I mean, in response to what she said, you know, the city cannot upzone an area without displacing small businesses unless they make a deliberate attempt to keep those businesses there. No business can handle an increase in rent from $15,000 to $45,000 a month. Yeah. I don't care how successful they are. So it's disingenuous for the city to claim that if these businesses are just creative, they'll be able to adapt, or they'll say they can move somewhere else. But you can't move a business somewhere else because your customer base knows where you are, and that's, you know, you've built them over 10, 20, 30 years. So, you know, the city needs to take more care of small businesses, and they don't.
Yeah, they really don't, and it really bothered me. I'm just going to touch on one other point that really touched me as well. When the lady said that these buildings, they get like $20,000 tax breaks, but they're charging like 700 square foot for each apartment. So only the wealthy are being able to move into these buildings, first of all. Second of all, they made no provisions for low-income housing, and the ones that were low income, their income was like $100,000. That's not low income. Mm-hmm. I'm like, why is that okay? Is there anything that those people can do? Is there anything we can do?
Well, there's absolutely things that we can do. I think that the public in general has a sense that change in the city is natural. The city's always been changing. The city will continue to change. And I think that they don't necessarily know how to look behind the curtain and see that there are specific policies that are driving the kinds of change we've seen in New York, in Brooklyn, and in all of New York City over the last 12 years. So I think that the more people are aware of why certain people are privileged over others in these changes, it's not an even playing field. You know, you can see through the subsidy programs that you're talking about that we have incentivized luxury housing all over the city. And we could make a choice as a city to subsidize more mixed income housing. Other cities have better economic development policies, in my opinion. Atlanta, for example, has really made a commitment to bringing along the people who've been in the city and held it together during the hard years. So these are really political choices, and going into the next election, we need to make sure that whoever becomes the mayor and whoever they appoint in terms of the city planning commission and so on is able to interject a little bit more of the public interest into our planning decisions. Because, you know, the role of government shouldn't be to just facilitate developers. Government has a role, and I think they've abdicated it in this administration.
So Kelly, the last question, because I've had you here for a little while, what do you want to accomplish with this film?
Well, the first thing is dialogue and education. I think that people really need to understand why change happens in the city, and understand that it's not a natural phenomenon, that there's actually policies that are encouraging a certain kind of change. Secondly, I think we need to talk to one another. I feel like there's a lot of talk about gentrification, but we don't really talk across race and class lines about it. So, you know, I think, like, yeah, it's just hard for us to talk, I think, with each other, with our neighbors, newcomers, old-timers, and so on. I do believe we have a common interest in keeping Brooklyn diverse and interesting, and a place that has rootedness and local character and all the great stuff that we associate with Brooklyn. I know. And I think a lot of new people like that too and don't want to see that go. And so I don't think, my feeling is that even the gentrifiers, so to speak, aren't only interested in their property values going up. I think people have a love for this place that is a little bit deeper than that, a lot of them anyway. So I'd like us to talk more to one another, to develop some common ground about what we value, and then we really need to get on our elected officials. I mean, they've been able to pass things like the Downtown Brooklyn Plan because nobody is calling them up every day in their office and saying, why'd you do that?
Yeah.
And so I think we have failed as a public and as residents of Brooklyn to really stay on our elected officials because they all take contributions from developers. They're all under pressure from the mayor and the speaker and the council. So they're going to go ahead with these plans unless we make it really hard for them to do that. And, we've got an election coming up. I think I want people to be more informed and to really be pushing.
Well, I have to say, my Brooklyn actually opened my eyes. I'm not so much into politics, but I'm really going to be more on it now. And this election, I am going to follow it very, very closely. I want to thank you and your team for making this documentary because it was just eye-opening, I guess you could say awakening almost. But I had the privilege of seeing the film already, but I know a lot of people haven't. When is it going to be out again, and where can people watch it?
We have another week-long theatrical run at Rerun Theater. That's in Brooklyn, Dumbo.
Okay.
Reruntheater.com is where you go to get tickets. That's March 8th through the 14th. It's our third week because we sold out weeks 1 and weeks 2. It's been amazing, and we have special guests and lots of great conversation happening after almost every screening. People can go to our website,
which is
mybrooklynmovie.com.
mybrooklynmovie.com.
Okay. All the information is there about screenings and anything else you want to know about the movie. A lot of resources on there too.
All right, thank you so much. I look forward to speaking with you again, and cheers to your next movie.